Hey everyone, welcome back to Tent Talk, the Farmers Market podcast. This is the show all about farmers markets, how to increase your market business success, and in the current climate, how to maximize safety while providing people with fresh food. Whether you're a farmers market manager or a farmer or food producer selling at farmers markets, this is the podcast for you. On today's episode of Tent Talk, we are going to catch up on what's been going on at farmers markets lately. We know regulations are changing, states have different procedures, and we just want to talk about how we keep up with all the changing rules and what to do if you're having issues with those. Hey everyone, I'm Bridget Myers. I'm one of your hosts here on Tent Talk, and I've spent many years as an on- and off-site farmers market manager, and I'm also the education coordinator at Farmers Market Pros.
And I'm Kat Fields White, still an active farmers market manager as the director of San Diego Markets, founder of Intense, the Farmers Market Pros, and host of the Farmers Market Pros community on Facebook.
And I'm co-host Justine Marzoni Mead, Tent Talk producer and all-around helper-outer for San Diego Markets.
And a huge helper-outer she is, too.
Super helper-outer, mask maker.
No kidding.
Just really helping everyone out.
Awesome.
Well,
Speaking of masks.
Yeah, let's talk about it.
Let's talk about masks. That's been a big topic in every group I'm in and every farmers market manager I talk to in all parts of the country. How are we doing with masks, folks? We're pretty masky here in San Diego at our markets, not necessarily outside the markets.
Yeah.
I wouldn't know because I'm not going anywhere besides the market.
True. But we do get people, we have to count people in and out of our markets. And so one of the other things we do is require masks, which luckily for us, because it makes it a lot easier, our county has issued a requirement that people wear masks in places like grocery stores, and those are the protocols that we operate under. Mm-hmm. So that makes it a little bit easier for us. The fact that nobody is enforcing it in terms of the county or the city or some other businesses and some other markets, unfortunately, in our county, makes it harder. But it does give us that to fall back on, that we can say, you know, they're required by the county. So that's tough. But then we get a lot of people that look down the street from our entrance where people are milling about on the sidewalk or getting ready to go into a restaurant with no mask and say, well, why do we have to do it here if they don't have to do it there? And all I can say is, I don't have a permit for there. I have a permit for here. So,
this is where my jurisdiction is, right inside these barricades. So please listen to me whilst inside my area.
I had a guy at the PB market on Tuesday say, I thought with the riots and everything, COVID was over. It's like, there's no connection between those two things. That's not a cause and effect deal. I'm sorry, sir. You seem confused.
Yeah. People are definitely confused about what's going on. I don't know. I will say it's a confusing time.
It is.
Confusing time to be alive. And information is, there's a smattering of information you can find on ye old interwebs. And it's really hard to know what's going on. And even though I am, I believe COVID is real. I'm one of those people. I am
like science. Are you into science? I never knew that about you.
And even if it's only mostly affecting the elderly, I care about the elderly. And
Thank you for that. Somebody just said, well, it's really only affecting old people, right? And I said, what are you trying to say? Like, I'm disposable? I'm kind of old.
Yeah. So that's kind of where I land. And I'm trying to not be judgmental of people who have different reviews for me. It's very difficult sometimes. But, I'm trying to understand, like, people are reading different news articles. People are getting their information from different places. So when you're at the farmer's market, you're interacting with so many different people that are coming from different corners of, internet information or whatever they may be reading. And so really when they're saying like, oh, it's over, or I don't need to wear a mask, or masks don't do anything, I try to not get real angry about that and just kind of understand, like, look, that's what they believe and that's how they feel. And you just have to kind of calmly explain to them, like, look, you're entering our business. These are the rules that the city and the county have tasked us with enforcing in order to operate our market and in order to keep our permit. So we just ask that you follow these rules while you're inside the farmer's market. And then when you go off to your own space, do as you will, I suppose. Yeah. But yeah, it's just like really controlling our own space. And usually people are like, oh, okay.
And I think that comes down to too, is like a lot of people don't know that the farmer's market is like at least ours is like a privately operated business. Like
Yeah.
they're just because it's out in the street, people think like, oh, this is I can just come, I can just come through here, whatever. And so, we have put up some signs like we reserve the right to refuse service and just kind of like and letting people know gently that in order to operate our farmers market, we need them to wear a mask. And yeah, they have, they can participate, but only if they're following our rules.
Yeah, like it's not just a park that you're strolling through.
Yeah.
And
Right.
understanding that that's confusing for people and it's hard. If you've managed markets or sold product at markets or been just involved in the behind the scenes operations of farmers markets for any amount of time, it's hard to remember that when you aren't operating a market, you don't get that. You're like,
That's
"Oh, I'm
true.
just strolling down the street. What's the big deal?"
And
These-
obviously all these pretty tents have fallen from the sky.
yeah, they just kind of land here. What's the problem? Like I can do whatever I want. I'm outside. I mean, it's confusing. So
It
I
is.
just
Yeah.
It's confusing. And we're lucky too that at least we have permitting issues to fall back on.
Yeah.
Like there's a lot of markets in some areas of the country where masks are not required even for the vendors and the farmers.
Yeah.
Much less for the public.
Yeah.
And so it's really tough for a market manager that wants to operate safely to be able to institute and monitor those kind of rules when they've got no municipal backup. I mean,
Exactly.
that's really rough. I'm hearing that from a lot of folks.
Yeah.
Also, this week, it seemed like, we're now in the height of summer vacations. And to me personally, it feels weird to take a vacation this summer. But for a lot of people, they're still coming to beautiful sunny San Diego because that's what they plan to do with their family. And so this weekend, we sold a lot of masks at the info booth, and it looked like there was a lot of tourists from out of town that were maybe coming from Arizona or other parts of the country where they aren't used to wearing masks, and all of a sudden they're like, whoa, I'm in wacky California and I have to wear a face mask. And I mean, for the most part, people were responsive to it, and we just kind of told them like, hey, we're selling masks, buy one, wear it when you're in the market, and people kind of follow directions. But I think that this is something that maybe market managers will notice if they have tourists from out of town. Maybe those tourists are wearing masks and people at the market aren't wearing masks, depending on where the state is, or vice versa.
That makes sense too. Yeah, I think it's really smart to have mask vendors right now.
Yeah.
So we've got vendors who used to be jewelry vendors or hot sauce vendors that now make masks.
If you're making
That are
hot sauce, you can
masks
also
now.
make masks.
And they're really cute masks.
Yeah.
So, I think one of the things, it's always good to see if you can figure out a carrot instead of a stick.
Mhm.
And so making your mask a fashion statement can be helpful.
Yeah.
Yep. All the cool kids wear masks. They wear these cute masks,
Yeah.
right?
And it's like once more people are wearing them and just not making a big deal out of it, I feel like it calms everyone else down. Like the tourists
Yeah.
that may be like, well, in my state, we don't have to wear masks. But then they look around and it's like, we're all wearing masks and we're not making a big deal out of it, no matter how hard we are suffocating in our masks all day. But we don't, we're just wearing them because
Right.
it is just what it is
Yeah.
right now. And it's not a big deal, and like chill out. And so we're just like, hey, let's get a mask. Like,
I
look
mean,
at this
can you-
cute one. It has cats on it or whatever.
Right, yeah. Avocados, the
Yeah.
best. Yeah. Farm oriented. I mean, can it just be a courtesy thing? Like,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, it's not a law that you don't blow your nose in your hand and wipe it on your fellow human, but you still, it's a
Don't do it.
courteous thing, right? Can't masks just be courtesy?
I love that disgusting analogy.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know. And I know some, there's a lot of people that just don't want to wear it.
No.
And there's probably market managers that may be
That's
listening
true.
right now that don't think that people should be wearing masks and aren't enforcing mask rules at their market. And you know what?
No, I've heard a lot of that.
That's
I've heard a
your
lot of,
prerogative.
I'm not the police. I'm not going to police this.
Yeah. Or maybe your just personal belief is that they don't do anything or whatever. But
But do they hurt you?
even
Even if they don't do anything, is it hurting you to just do it just in case they're
Oh my gosh.
effective? I don't know.
And I'll just have to say, there is overwhelming scientific evidence that they do help. I feel like we have to say
Yeah.
that. Like, we
True.
can
It's
tiptoe
not an
around
opinion.
people's-
We can't
we
just
can tiptoe around people's quote unquote political beliefs, but there is overwhelming scientific evidence that wearing a face covering of some sort, whether it is a N95 mask or even just a hanky, that it does decrease the spread of COVID.
So you're saying, Justine, we're not going to agree to disagree with science? Is that what you're
No,
telling me?
I don't think we should.
Okay.
If we
All right.
if we can agree that farmers markets are good for local economy and farmers markets are good for small farmers and small business people, I think we can agree that science is real and that wearing a face mask decreases the spread of a deadly virus.
Facts
Okay.
are just facts.
All
That's
right.
what it is. And I will
and
say,
you can quote us.
yeah. And my dad lives in Vietnam, and he's lived there through this whole thing. And so it's been fascinating to realize that nobody has died of COVID in Vietnam, which is
The whole
a
country.
very populated country. And it's because they're not a very touchy
Culture.
culture.
Yeah.
I don't know if I've talked about this in the podcast before, but they wore face masks anyways because the air quality is so terrible there.
Aw.
So they were already kind of wearing them. And then right when everything happened, they shut everything down, had a huge lockdown. And then everyone just wore masks and nobody was like disagreeing in the streets because they needed their haircut and all that stuff. And everyone just wore masks. And I just talked to him last night. Everything is open in Vietnam.
Oh.
Everything's back to how it was, and they just like take your temperature when you walk into a restaurant, and you wear a mask when you walk around. But like businesses are able to be open, and so like from a business standpoint, he's like, I go to all my regular spots and they're all just as busy as they ever were. It's just that there's extra hand washing stations and you're getting your temperature taken and everyone's wearing a mask. He's like, so the economy is able to like get back to normal, but you just have to take these like courtesy safety precautions.
Yeah.
So if we can all kind of think about it like that, like, you know, if we want our businesses to get back to being what they were and like stimulating the economy, we just have to take these safety measures. They just go hand in hand right now. So let's just do it.
Let's just do it.
Let's just do
Yeah.
it.
And I mean, farmers markets, we've talked about this before too, but like farmers market managers are used and farmers market vendors are used to having to kind of jump over little health regulation hurdles,
Sure.
like having a hand washing station in your booth, or you know, having an inspector from the ag department come and calibrate your scale, or like you know, things like that. Like we do that for the safety and for the health of the farmers market, and so it's just kind of like, yeah, it sucks to have to wear a face mask, but if you want this to exist long term, then those are things that we just have to figure out how to implement into our everyday practices.
Yeah,
I
think
agree.
just taking like an educational kind of stance with your shoppers
Yeah.
and just giving them that kind of education, like, hey, I know it like might be a bummer and, you know, maybe you don't want to wear it, it's uncomfortable, but like, look, we want our farmers to be able to sell to you. We want you to be able to buy fresh produce and buy locally made food. So slap that mask on and come on in and shop and wash your hands. And, you know, I mean, I feel like just kind of taking that approach and not being argumentative and not talking about the politics
Yeah.
of it, which I don't know why it's a political thing. It's just science. But like just taking that kind of stance can probably help your market operate on a more
And keep
long-term.
operating. So
Yeah.
that was kind of our
Yeah.
next topic is I've seen some markets now that are trying to, well, in some cases ignore. We had a conversation about this in another managers group yesterday, but what do you do about markets down the street from you that are ignoring protocols? And
Yeah.
there's not much you can. We didn't come up with any good answers, but that was a question. But then we also have markets where I'm seeing the managers go back and tell the city, well, why can't we do this? Restaurants can do this.
Mm-hmm.
And my concern and caution to people taking that tact is, do we really want to be classified as a restaurant? Because restaurants in our city were closed for 7 or 8 weeks.
Yep.
Farmers
Mhm.
markets were closed for a week, maybe 2, because we're an essential service as a grocery store. So I don't know that we want to walk ourselves out of that essential service category.
Yeah.
Things are still changing. Spikes are happening in different parts of the country. I think if we want to stay open at all, maybe we don't do everything we used to do.
Yeah.
And maybe we just accept that we want to stay in that essential services category for a while and see how this all plays out. Because at the core, I mean, farmers markets are essential grocery stores. So maybe we want to sort of huddle around that core and make s'mores until before we really jump into, well, let's define us as a festival or let's define us as a restaurant. That might not be the best direction right this minute.
Yeah, I think that's important to keep in mind. Like, what category is your farmer's market in? And you need to stick with that, because if it comes down to some other kind of crazy shutdown happening, you want to be able to say, look, this whole time I have been telling you we're an essential business. We are a grocery store. We need to remain open, even if I hope this does not happen, but things have to get shut down again and restaurants need to get shut down again. You want to be able to
Florida,
say,
they're shutting things now again.
Yeah.
Because they had such a big spike already.
Arizona, there's so many restaurants that are self-shutting themselves down because they have staff and customers that are testing positive. So which is so unfortunate. It's like you work so hard. First of all, you are closed for so many weeks and can't operate. And then you work so hard to reopen.
Hire
and
people
then you
back.
hire people back. People are coming off unemployment. People are coming out to eat. And then you have to shut down again.
Ugh.
Oh, it's just like
So hard.
wacky. And I really feel for them. And I know it's such a hard set of decisions that people are having to make as business owners. But like, let's not group ourselves into those kind of things. Like, let's stay safe. And so we can stay open.
So that's another question. That's
yeah.
something else we were talking about.
Yeah.
Just in the last couple of days. What do you do when so we have a restaurant in San Diego here in our neighborhood that just closed down because they have a positive case. One of their employees is positive.
Oh no.
So they just closed the restaurant again. They just got opened not too long ago, and now they're closed again.
Yeah.
And a conversation that came up yesterday in our farmers market coalition forum is a market who has a farmer who's positive. Actually, I'm not positive it's the farmer. It may be the wife of the farmer. But in any case, he's now out of the market, although he's still sending food to their food hub because they're doing an aggregating kind of food hub thing, as a lot of markets are lately. But he's not in the market right now. And they're trying to decide what to do next. So here in California, at least in San Diego County, if anybody in food service has an employee or anyone in the business that tests positive, we have to report it to the Department of Environmental Health. I'm not exactly sure what happens after that. I think they just need to make people aware of it, and then you can sanitize and you can work around it, but you have to notify them.
To like file it.
And I think
record.
maybe, I think what you have to do is you have to notify them, and then you have to tell them how you're going to mitigate any possible effects of that.
Mm-hmm.
And then they post things like, this grocery store had 2 positive employees. It comes up on the daily report thing. So for a market manager, so this person that we were talking to is not in a state that requires that. In fact, she said she contacted her health department to see what to do. And they said, well, just take precautions. So that we're kind of out there making this up on our own. But
that's specific instructions.
Yeah, isn't it? We've got kind of that going on with masks here too. It's like sometimes health department just says, oh, well, you can figure out guidelines. It's like, no, I can't. I need guidance.
Help me.
But so there's just so many questions about that if you've got somebody that's positive. So one of them obviously is safety.
Yeah.
And as she pointed out, and this does seem to follow all the science that I've read, there is nothing that seems to show that this is a foodborne illness in any way.
Yeah.
So it probably is not being transmitted by coming in contact with that farmer, presuming that he's taking precautions and washing his hands and that, kind of basic things. And you're washing your produce. So there's that. I don't know how he's transporting his vegetables because they do seem to say that it's transmitted on things like cardboard.
Surfaces for
people
whatever
telling you
amount
to
of time.
keep surfaces.
Yeah.
What it boiled down to for me really was that I felt like, and this is easy for me to say because we don't have anybody positive, because this to me is my recurring nightmare right now. This is what's keeping me awake at night. But my sense is that if you have somebody who's positive, your customers and your other vendors deserve to be able to make an informed decision. They, just on a moral basis, they kind of have a right to be able to decide, should I take 14 days out? Should I stop for 14 days? There are some people that think that, like the restaurants that close down when they have a positive case, you should close the market. We actually had a manager a few weeks ago at a small market in a different part of the country. She tested positive.
Yeah.
And she closed her market for 2 weeks. And it's
because who's going to run it if she's sick? But
I think maybe it was just that practical a matter. But it's tricky for us because unlike a restaurant owner, we're not shutting our business. We're shutting, in our case, 40 businesses. We're saying this guy's sick, so you other 15 farmers have nowhere to sell your produce.
Yeah.
You other food people have nowhere to sell what you've just made, your baked goods and things. So it's really, really complicated. I'm not going to say that on this podcast we have the answer, but it's just something we should all be thinking about. And then my other concern on it was this. In most markets, and correct me if I'm wrong, listeners out there, maybe in your market it's different. If one vendor knows something, does that just stay a secret? Because in our market, if one farmer or vendor knows,
travels fast.
News travels really fast. Real news, fake news, rumors,
news.
Fake news for sure. So, if one person at a market knows something, I think you can be fairly sure that a lot of people at that market know something.
Mhm.
Maybe not the whole story, which is even worse. And if the folks at the market inside the tents know it, there's a fair chance that somebody's going to say something to customers
Yep.
who may have a brother-in-law or a friend or just feel like they should pass the news along. You may end up with a news reporter, from your local newspaper or your TV station or whatever. And then what you've got is not only a farmer who's tested positive with no statement from you, but now you've got a cover up.
Yep.
And so when it comes out that way, then you're really dealing with some difficulties.
Yeah.
So, I think planning ahead for these kind of things and having a protocol figured out before this happens is really important. And of course, that means we all should have thought about this 3 months ago, but we should start thinking about it now.
Let's think about it now and
Yeah.
put your heads together with your other managers and your staff. And if you work with your city or whatever department you work with that manages and operates the market, you all need to get on the same page about it. And you all need to just have a discussion about it, because you don't want to have a positive case and then try to figure it out and then realize that everyone has a different idea of what the protocol should be. And some people think you shouldn't say anything, and some people think you should. And while you're hashing that out, it gets leaked, and then you got a situation. So even if you're the sole manager and you're just running your market independently, make your own plan and write it down so you can reference it when it happens, because operating in a crisis situation is difficult. But you need to have a plan. And definitely our professional advice is to not get in a situation where you're not saying anything, because if it gets leaked out, which it probably will, then you're going to have a different situation, which is your cover up situation.
Yeah.
So
It's complicated.
it's very complicated.
Farmers markets have always been complicated.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, we've always had a lot of people have no idea, how many things you're juggling, and everything you do affects so many other people.
Yeah.
It's complicated, but we're farmers market managers and we're good at complicated. We can do hard things.
That's
Is that the
right.
saying?
That's right. And then as a vendor or a farmer, you need to think about if you or your partner or whoever's working with you gets sick, what are you going to do? And also, if there's someone that tests positive at a market that you're at, what do you feel comfortable doing? You need to just maybe think about it, maybe jot down a couple things. What action would you take? And maybe have a conversation with your market manager about that and say, hey, this is how I feel about it. I just want to give you a heads up before anything happens. Hopefully nothing will, but this is how I feel, just so you know. And
That's a really good idea.
Just have open, frank
Yeah.
conversations, because you don't want to wait till later and realize that you're on opposite ends of the spectrum with, how you feel about operating. If something like that happens, just kind of talk about it. I don't know. I just feel like it's better just to have these conversations
For
where
sure.
we're at. Yeah.
And I think that's also something important for market managers to think about. It's kind of different where if you say you work at a grocery store and you are an employee of that business, if you were to say, I don't feel comfortable working here during this pandemic, your manager could just say okay, well, you don't work here anymore. Where
Yeah.
a farmer's market manager and the vendor, that's not, it's a more complicated, nuanced relationship. It's not just employer-employee. And so something for market managers to think about is, how am I going to curate my farmer's market if I have a lot of vendors deciding that they don't want to be a vendor right now? And that may be an opportunity where you can invite new vendors in, or that may decrease the footprint of your market, or but finding a clear response that is also graceful and patient in these uncharted territories is something to think through. If you are, I think a lot of vendors or a lot of markets have probably already gone through this once before, and now maybe we're seeing a second wave of it, and maybe it will continue. But if your market hasn't experienced this yet, because you're in a state where COVID hasn't really impacted you yet, that's something to think about, how you're going to deal with different vendors' varied comfortableness with serving a population that could potentially be spreading COVID.
Yeah.
It's tricky right now, actually, because we have vendors that have not been comfortable coming to the markets, farmers that had medically fragile people in their household that didn't want to be out there and then taking germs back to the house, that kind of thing. And so they've been out now, some of them for 10 or 11 weeks. And now I've got a few of them that want to come back, but our footprint has been way reduced. So some of these folks are really senior farmers. And by senior, I mean, they've been in the market a really long time. They want to come back. I've got newer farmers that maybe they were younger, maybe they were just, more risk comfortable, who have been in the market that whole time that those folks have been out. It doesn't really feel like it's fair to kick them out now that this older farmer wants to come back. It's a lot of hard decisions.
Yeah.
As usual, market managers are making lots of hard decisions, and vendors and farmers are making lots of hard decisions because you have to decide. I think this farmer's feeling like, whoa, it's been, 10 or 11 weeks since I was out of the public eye. Can I really afford to just not be out there? Are my customers going to form alliances to new farmers, which of course they are.
Yeah.
Because those are the people they're seeing.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's really, really hard for everybody. There's a lot of complicated decisions now. Life is weird.
Life was weird.
Yeah.
2020. Yeah. I think just, having those conversations and giving people grace and understanding that everyone's coming from a different place.
Yeah.
They're just coming from a different little place where their family is or where their business is. So just kind of keeping the conversations going is important. What else?
I think that this is another thing that some markets may be facing is, are you expanding your market? Are you in a state where more things are opening up and you're now having the leeway to, bring your booths a little bit closer together and maybe add more vendors? Currently in San Diego, that's kind of what we're seeing, is the ability to add more vendors to our market. And that brings a whole host of additional problems to solve, like adding more staff and rearranging the vendors and deciding who we're going to bring in as vendors. And also, are we going to be able to sell hot food? And if we are going to sell hot food, does that impact how many people we can have inside of the market at once? And so it's kind of this like jigsaw puzzle that, we keep having to figure out and moving things around. So
yeah, it really is. And keeping people top of mind, customers, that the markets are open and that new things are happening. And really, communications is huge right now, because in our case, at least, and I'm hearing this from people all over the country, farm sales are way up.
Yeah.
Whatever form of market you have open and whatever kind of market you're operating, farmers are doing great. We have way, way less human beings on our street right now because we have to count how many people are on a block, but they're all there to shop.
Yeah.
Pretty much, although it's loosening up a little bit with the tourists and things.
Some people are dawdling.
Yeah, but farmers are doing really, really well. I'd say some of our grocery vendors are doing as well as they were before. Others are down maybe 10%.
Yeah.
And, there's people that are unemployed, so there's not as much disposable income out there. And then we have other grocery vendors and food vendors and things that are down by up to 25 or 30%. I'm saying this anecdotally because we don't have a percentage market. We don't collect those figures, but just talking to people. And I think it's things that aren't maybe a necessary grocery item. They're an impulse buy. And so when you have less humans on the street, you're not selling as many.
Yeah.
So we need to be sure we're doing things to pump up those people, make sure you include them in your newsletters and, tag them in social media and get the word out and remind people that, okay, normally you wouldn't necessarily buy Kraft popcorn if you're on your shopping list.
Yeah.
You just grab it, but there's not as many people out there to grab it. So add that to your shopping list.
And like you're creative with your marketing, like our Kraft popcorn guy or like our Kraft, this guy makes like amazing soups. It's like, all right, well, do you need a quick meal? Do you need a snack that'll satisfy your kids and keep them quiet for just a couple of minutes, while you're home? Like think about what your shoppers' daily lives are looking like these days, especially, and kind of cater to that. Like you're pushing the farmers because people are at home and they're cooking more and they're doing more creative things in the kitchen. I know I am finding myself in that boat, but then also people are getting burnt out by that. And so it's like, well, when you're burnt out from cooking, get this pre-made soup. It's already made for you. Like kind of balancing your marketing and trying to appeal to every day of your shoppers' lives.
Yeah. Things are not the same as they were. So your marketing needs to not be exactly the same as it was. You need to keep those creative things in mind. And another thing you can do as a vendor or a market manager is think about scheduling. We've always really wanted all of our vendors to be there every week because the customers wanted to buy the same things every week. Right now, since our footprint has been reduced, we don't have as many spaces available. We have more vendors ready to come back. They also may be seeing staffing problems and can't keep up with production as easily and things. So we're looking at a little bit different scheduling. We've got a few vendors now that are alternating spaces. So these two completely different vendors share a space, and one's there first and third Saturdays and the other's there second and fourth Saturdays, that kind of thing. So everybody gets a chance to get out there some. They're not necessarily required to be there every week if their production isn't quite up to speed, or if their sales just aren't strong enough to justify staffing it every single week. You can be a little bit more creative in your scheduling.
Yeah, which is not something we would typically ever even think of allowing a vendor to do under normal circumstances. But now that things are changing, you kind of have to change with that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Get creative.
The new normal.
Yeah, it's good. All right. Oh, one more thing I wanted to say about the rules coming to, like, our lines were getting a little long at the market. And I know I saw a couple other posts from people in our Farmers Market Pros community on Facebook that were saying, a couple other managers were saying, like, the lines are kind of long. We have to explain all the rules to everybody. We started issuing people like paper, like bracelets, like that you would get at a concert. So we walk down the line, and if they're shopping alone and or they're regular shoppers, like we've seen them every week and we know that they know the rules, we give them a little bracelet. And so when they get to the front of the line, that person who's working the entrance can just say, oh, you have a bracelet, you can come on in.
Right.
And they don't have to worry about like asking them the questions, like, do you know these rules, or going through the whole thing with them. So that has really helped us kind of keep the flow of shoppers better. And so the vendors have given us feedback that they're appreciative of that, because the, more steady flow of shoppers is better for sales versus like a few shoppers at a time all day, and like kind of the line getting a little bit longer, or people getting frustrated and leaving. That has helped.
That has
sales.
helped a lot. And actually, Justine had a good idea about that last week, because she was saying we should adapt that into sort of a Friends of the Market membership kind of deal, where you get, instead of a bracelet, maybe a cute pin or something that you put on your clothes, or some kind of ID card you can flash, whatever it might be. It might be something that your loyal shoppers would be interested in buying. And then you make sure that they get some fun premiums. You highlight a different vendor each week and who's going to give our Friends of the Market a discount, that kind of thing. Keep them engaged. It's another way to make sure that they keep coming back and shopping, help your vendors keep making better sales, and also maybe a second little source of income if you make sure that your premium and your membership price has a little bit of margin in between. Farmers markets that, many of us are still struggling because the staffing requirements are so much higher than they used to be, and the capacity for hosting vendors is so much lower than it used to be because of distancing and things. This is another way to kind of help your operating costs.
Yeah, we'll talk about that. I mean, like Erin was saying on our podcast last week about sponsorship, this is another kind of revenue generator that you can do that's really helpful for the shoppers and the vendors, because then they get their regular shoppers that come in and feel like they're a part of the farmers market family even more so than they do right now. And then you can also get a little revenue stream to keep your staff fully employed and buy all that caution tape.
That's right. Buy that caution tape. Buy that masking tape to put on the ground to show those 6 feet distances.
Oh boy.
Do we want to talk about kind of interesting political and activism stuff for a minute?
Let's do it.
There's some things happening that we
Let's
need to keep in mind.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of markets are still struggling with how to find the balance between talking about Black Lives Matter and the protests and racial equality and everything that's going on in the country. I think you come off really tone deaf if you don't say anything, I think, right now, because it's been going on for so long. At the same time, you want to be careful about saying something if you're either not taking any action, or if maybe you're taking actions that you may have to defend. Or, just a lot of what they call performative allyship. So you don't want to be just out there posting things because that looks cool.
Or you feel like
you're part of the trend. Or you feel like you have to when you're not doing the things that back it up. So you have to be really careful about that. There's a farmers market organization back east right now that I think, probably with the best of intentions, posted a list of Black-owned businesses that were in and around the farmers market scene, and got a really hot and heavy, and some very justified and some more complicated responses, because they haven't admitted many of those Black-owned businesses, especially to their larger, most successful market. And so those folks
Oh,
are
I
coming
saw
out and
this. I know what you're
saying,
talking
"Well,"
about now.
yeah. So, it's like, nice of you to call us out, but you don't actually let me into your big
Yeah.
market.
Yeah.
I'm in this little tiny kind of out in the edges kind of market, and I've been asking for 7 years maybe to get into that big market, and you've let other new people in, and you're not really doing anything proactive about encouraging Black-owned businesses. And so that's an issue, but it's a different and bigger and potentially more embarrassing and not good kind of issue to act like you're promoting Black-owned businesses and not be following it up with that kind of action. So you need to be careful what you're putting out there. I
Yeah.
mean, number one is act with integrity.
Yeah.
Push Black-owned and minority businesses, recruit them. That's a good thing to do. But boy, if you're not, don't pretend that you are, or don't. And I'm going to say this because I know some of the people involved in the organization that's having that big blow up right now. I'm going to say that I doubt that they pretended like they were. I think they haven't thought through this issue enough.
Yeah.
For years.
Yeah.
And certainly this last few weeks.
Mm-hmm.
So, you have to really look at yourself, and if you're talking the talk, are you walking the walk, and what does that mean to be actually promoting diversity and all? We definitely do not do enough. We have, all things being equal, we've tried to accept minority-owned businesses and things, but honestly, we don't recruit heavily enough. We don't, we're not doing things to nurture Black-owned businesses enough, as much as we should, as much as everybody should. So we're aware of that, and we're posting, but you got to be careful what you post. You got to be careful what you say, and you got to be. And I think it's okay to say, I'm learning, I'm still figuring it out, I don't really have it down. Philosophically, I feel like this is a good thing. I haven't taken enough action, but I'm going to keep the conversation in the public. But just be really careful where those lines are between performative and support and not backing yourself into a corner. And then if you get into a situation like that, we're not going to have a whole session here where we teach you about public relations and conflict resolution and crisis management in a PR kind of space, but just
although we kind of could.
we could. Really quick pro tip: if you're on social media and you're getting literally hundreds of comments on a post, and you're only responding to the ones that say, "We're behind you, we love your market," and you're ignoring every comment that's negative or has a question for you, that's not the way to do it. You're doing it wrong.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
If you're going to post stuff like that, you need to be
Yeah.
prepared to have that conversation. And I think maybe a lot of businesses are trying and they're doing what they think is right, and they want to work toward this. And when they post stuff like that, and then they see the feedback coming in from businesses saying, but hey, wait a minute, you haven't admitted me, like you haven't been really taking the action. It's just a big mirror being held up to them. And so you need to be able to, like, as a business, look into that mirror and say, you're right, I was wrong about that. And I do, why I posted this is because I do want to work harder, and I'm not perfect, and I've messed up, and I want to work towards something that's better, and just have those conversations with people
and
be
transparency
genuine.
Helps. I mean, so some of the stuff they're ignoring, I can guess what their answer would be, because it's some people asking about, why isn't this business at the market? And there's probably an answer that goes something along the lines of, this is a very farm focused market and we don't carry that kind of product here. They're not even saying that.
Yeah.
So people are making their own conclusions. So transparency is almost never a bad idea.
Yeah.
And as much as it's important for farmers market groups to be, and business owners to be having this conversation online, it's even more important for you to be having these conversations within your farmers market organization. If you're just posting from your farmers market Instagram, and then you're not bringing this into your weekly staff meetings or your conversations with your farmers market board or your neighborhood association, and it's really just stopping at social media, then you're not going to be changing anything. It's just a conversation that exists on the internet. And if you're not implementing it into the behind the scenes every day, then it's not really helping anything. So
no, you're doing it wrong.
Yeah. And it's okay to go learn a lot and figure out how to do it better.
And I think, to as separate, even though it's happening at the same time, it sometimes feels really separate from like what we were just talking about with COVID. But again, if you look at the data, COVID is unproportionately impacting communities of color, Black and brown people. And if there's, one simple way that you want to be able to help in this fight for equity is protect your communities of color by implementing some of these safety measures to protect them from getting COVID. And those are ways
Absolutely.
that market managers and vendors can help if you're feeling lost of not knowing what to do. That's a really simple way. We're still in the middle of a pandemic. Wear your freaking mask. Wash your hands. Those are certain things or simple things that you can implement.
Yeah, exactly.
Farm workers. We may get into the farm worker thing more deeply either next week or the week after, because we got some stuff to talk about on that. But you need to be talking to your farmers, making sure they've got hand wash stations in the fields,
Yeah.
and where their workers eat and things. So because we've starting to hear some things about that's sometimes not okay.
Oh, wow,
yeah. Take care of them. Take care of your people. Yeah.
So, and in other quasi-political and and pretty much all about equality and recognizing others humans with kindness and love and encouragement. Pride is happening now.
Yeah.
And so, and that's another one where you want to be respectful and you want to recognize that it's going on. And what you really, really don't want to do is prohibit people from talking about it at your market, especially if somebody's filming you on their cell phone. There's a bad story out there, and we're not going to delve too deeply into it, but there's a manager that wouldn't let a vendor pass out pride flags at her market. The whole situation did not go well. It wasn't handled well. It has turned into not a good situation. It's pretty new, so we're not going to delve into it in too much detail, but
in
honestly,
general,
folks, pride is a movement that encourages people to be accepted and loved, and taking a negative stand on that is not a good thing right now.
Yeah, and just talking
or anytime,
about
but
anytime. But people say like, oh well, would you let your vendors hand out Confederate flags or
Somebody
whatever? And it's, to me, I'm like, excuse me, this is where you just have to like, yes, everyone's trying to be politically correct and like, oh,
agree to
freedom
disagree.
of speech and all that, but it's like one flag is promoting just love and acceptance. That's it. Not infringing on anybody's rights, just love and acceptance. And the other flag is like very clearly promoting hate and has a racist history and division. And so it's like, sorry, that's just a very like easy thing for me as a market manager to say absolutely not. And letting people hand out different flags. Yes, you can hand out the one that promotes equality and love, and no, you can't hand out anything that divides anybody. Sorry. Like that's just is what it is. And it really, and we talked about this when we talked about when we had the whole episode about Black Lives Matter, is it's like, look, you're in charge of your business and you can say, you're not, if you want to hand out Confederate flags at my farmer's market, you're not my ideal customer.
Yeah.
And maybe some farmers markets that is
I think
their
some people are
customer.
unsubscribing right this minute, even as we talk. And that's okay.
And
that's okay with us.
And we're in San Diego and we're liberal people, whatever. But like, I can understand that people come from different backgrounds and that they are educated in different ways and that they're brought up in different ways and all that stuff. Whatever.
Love wins.
Well, I just, whatever. Farmers markets are about telling everyone to come out and enjoy your community and get to know each other and love each other. And that's just what they are. And that's what they should be.
There you go.
There we go.
Oh, I was just going to kind of tie in pride to the summer conversation we were just saying about Black Lives Matter. And if you're a farmers market group or a vendor or whatever, and you want to post on social media in support of pride, that's great. But make sure that you're also bringing that into your staff meetings and your policies at farmers markets. Like if you are in support of this, then make sure that you really are in the vendors that you're accepting and the way that you're treating your employees, and not just again this performative allyship or this jumping on the bandwagon of Pride Month, but making sure that it is something that you are walking the walk.
Walking the walk and not just talking the talk. And honestly, if that's not the way you feel, I know that religious beliefs and all that stuff that runs deep, and if you're in a community that's not an important thing for people to talk about, and it's not important for you to have flags at your market and all that stuff, you know what? I hope that you are learning new things every day and that you progress. But like I tell my kids, if you don't have anything nice to say, don't say anything at all. You don't have to say
Yeah.
anything. You can just say, this is a farmer's market, come shop. You don't have to say, we don't believe in that and put your flags away and don't come in here with your rainbow shirt. You can just chill out and you can just not say anything at all. So I wish people would stop trying to like argue against every single thing. And you can just kind of don't talk about it unless it's something you genuinely believe and you're going to take action on it. And don't say anything against it. You don't have to say anything against it.
Kind of those old rules that was it Andy Rooney, some really old school dude said, most of what I need to know I learned in kindergarten.
Yeah.
Play nicely with others. If you don't have anything nice to say, don't say anything at all.
Chill out. Take a nap.
Take a nap. Yeah.
2020 is a great time to chill out and to listen and learn and just be kind of more open-minded. So
that's right.
That's all. I'll get
open-minded and masked up.
Yeah. Wear your mask and open your ears. Cover your mouth and open your ears. Anyways, I'll get off my soapbox. Sorry. I'm fired up today.
We like it. Actually, you know what we're going to do next week on Tent Talk?
Tell me.
We're going to invite a few people from the Farmers Market Pros community to Zoom in with us, since we're now recording our Tent Talk on Zoom because we're all social distancing here.
Yes.
So while we're doing that anyway, we're going to throw it out there to the Farmers Market Pros community and see if a few people would like to join us on Tent Talk, and we'll pick some topics and we'll have some different viewpoints from around the country.
Like a little round table.
Yeah,
It'd be nice to kind of get out of our little SoCal corner and see what's going on.
That's right. I mean, we pick it up from being in other discussion groups and from the Farmers Market Pros community, but obviously these conversations are colored by San Diego watercolors.
Yeah.
There's no doubt about it. So it's good to have other people on that have experiences in other parts of the country, just like our listeners.
Yeah. Love it. Yes.
Cool.
Alrighty. Well, ladies, that was a long, quick catch-up, but let's wrap it up here. So thanks, everyone, so much for tuning in. We love it that you guys listen to us every week. And to hear what's happening in various parts of the country or share what's happening in your area, we have terrific conversations and people sharing resources over in our private Facebook group, the Farmers Market Pros Community. Feel free to come over, answer the 3 qualifying questions, and join that group. You can also message us on Instagram at Farmers Market Pros or email us at connect@farmersmarketpros.com. Thank you so much for listening to Tent Talk, and please leave us a review on iTunes, Stitcher, or wherever you access your podcast, and let us know how you're enjoying Tent Talk. We are approaching our 100th episode of Tent Talk, so we're so excited. Woohoo! So we love seeing those reviews, and we love it when you subscribe. Just really helps us. So be sure to subscribe to the podcast so you don't miss the next one. It comes out every Monday. This podcast is produced by Farmers Market Pros, where passion meets profit meets pandemic. Today's episode was recorded and edited by our own Justine Marzoni Mead, and the original music is by David Mead. Thank you so much for listening.